Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Palantir's head of public health, Hirsch Jain, revealed Palantir's vision for healthcare and even gives great answers that honestly would be applicable to the NHS if they actually paid attention. So Milken Institute posted the 40-minute long panel on their website, but I was able to get Hirsch's parts out here where he explains his own as well as Palantir's perspective on healthcare. And you can go directly to their website for the whole link, but I've got his parts for the video here. But really quickly before that, just a fast background on Hirsch. He primarily works with the federal government clients and deploying Palantir software there like the HHS, CDC, FDA, ASPR, NIH, and others. And he was also responsible for helping lead the federal response to the pandemic back in 2020. So I'll play his sections first and give my thoughts after.
Hirsch, full disclosure, I'm a paid advisor to Palantir, so I'm going to ask him the hardest questions. Hirsch, Palantir has worked with all the health agencies to aggregate data that previously was really hard to gather, to give a picture from above in a way you can visualize the environment that we're all in, and whether it's COVID, whether it's cancer incidences, whether it's pollution and cancer incidences mapped on each other. So number one, how do you find all of that data in a discombobulated, often very parochial data environment in the healthcare system? And secondly, knowing where we are is great, but how do you use it to know where we're going to go? And how does that affect your view of the future of healthcare?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it's worth maybe the brief origin story of Palantir here, which is the fundamental principles with which Palantir was started was that there's this age-old view that privacy and security need to be traded off with one another. And that I think particularly was in a national security context where, in a post 9/11 world, we really needed software to help bridge the gap and both protect the data of the citizens of the United States and also provide the infrastructure to help us get ahead of and address potential threats to the country. That ultimately resulted in us building a software platform that helps integrate data that organizations already have access to into one place, but critically locking that down, securing it, and providing the federal government with the tools to provide governance and auditability and interpretability on top of all of that information. The second half of that, which I think really gets to the second half of your question, is not just having information in one place so that we can create analytics and dashboards and run models, but actually really so that we can connect it to the decisions and the operations that an organization needs to run. And so that's, the epidemiologists every day at the CDC, the researchers at the NIH, the supply chain experts on the ground at a number of commercial distributors, really having data at their fingertips to make the decisions that they need every day. And I love what Commissioner Killif said before this, which is we need to get back to the point where clinicians are spending the majority of their time focused on providing care rather than munging data and filling out forms, and that's where software, technology, AI needs to go. And so when I think about the future of healthcare, where Palantir's role is in all of this, helping really provide a centralizing force across this incredibly fragmented ecosystem without pretending to have a silver bullet and accepting that all data is going to be in one place, really prioritizing security and control and auditability has always been important. And we've seen how much that resonates in healthcare, but it's becoming incredibly, even more and more important as we think about bringing AI into these contexts and ensuring that interpretability, model readiness and bias checking, all of that is part of the way that AI factors into the decisions we're making. And so very concretely, I think we've seen that approach be incredibly relevant during COVID, from disease surveillance and getting a comprehensive view of everything happening at CDC and nationwide, to providing research infrastructure that's really patient-centric and gives tools to researchers across the country and prioritizes EHR interoperability, to supply chain forecasting and identifying potential shortages. But all of that is about not just seeing that data and having a common operating picture, but tying it to the decisions that you can make, the places you can allocate resources, the places we need to we need to make sure there is stock and supply, the places and the tools that we need to empower researchers with to really drive the next round of cancer insights. And so I think that ethos of connecting data and analytics and now AI to decisions and its operational context is more relevant than ever, because working backwards from those decision points is the only way we're going to be able to make sense of this fragmented ecosystem.
So, we say you can't change what you can't measure, and Palantir is like the top of being able to measure things. How do people, in your experience, your customers, your agencies, how do they learn to act on data that they never had before? And how well are they doing at that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Greg, the majority of our engagement, so first of all, Palantir is not a data broker. We're not showing up at our engagements with various federal agencies, providing them data that they then have access to. I think what we have found is that at the majority of these agency partners and a number of our commercial partners, the data a lot of the information is already there. And the ability to synthesize it and get it into one common format, location, and operational context, what we call the ontology, really provides unprecedented ability to make the decisions that are already being made just with a combination of PowerPoints and consultants and spreadsheets and dashboards, and really getting that built into software in a first-class way where the decisions operators are making every day is backed by the data the organization already has is really powerful, and I think is doable. It's a matter of making use of what you already have rather than only prioritizing and discussing the things that you need to get access to.
So the first question is pretty broad here, and it's regarding how to visualize and analyze incidents when the data environment in healthcare is scattered everywhere. And while also seeing how do we use this information not just to know what is going on, but where to go and to give us perspective on the future of Palantir. So he, of course, makes sure to give context that Palantir has been in the business of balancing data privacy and security, and this parallels, honestly, with the speaking points that Alex Karp has spoken about at large in many of the summits around the world, just in the more military context and intelligence context. So Hirsch visualizes how I also align with the future of healthcare, and that's getting the data all together so that providers can focus on providing care instead of just the administration and filling out forms there. So having a secure and centralized way to view everything happening in the healthcare ecosystem is crucial, and that's all the more so with artificial intelligence starting to be applicable. And he ensures also to provide that the real-world experience with the pandemic that Palantir has already been doing with this kind of work here is important. So he reveals that their engagements with their federal agency customers and partners is that the info and the data is already there, and just that they don't have the ability to synthesize it themselves or intelligize it, so Palantir comes in and does that. And that is the game changer there that they provide. If the whole UK can see and understand this explanation of Palantir, honestly, the data is literally already there. Palantir is just making it usable for you and actually able to act on it. Now, this is a very widespread kind of vision here for healthcare. And of course, he's trying to not apply this in the NHS here, but I just wanted to draw that parallel. And tying it with the federal government as well and that response to the pandemic, we all were kind of in that situation where we saw that it was not that easy for this to happen all at once. And people were just getting overwhelmed on what to do, especially on the communication front.
Same question to you, Hirsch. What healthcare problem do you worry about the most, and what's the Palantir solution to that problem?
Great question. I think everything Judy said resonates. The fragmentation of the system is really scary and complex, and I think maybe the hardest part of that is it feels really intractable. A slightly different answer is that I think if we had wanted to author a playbook as a country for how to be like maybe a little bit tinfoil hat about how to like issue a bio threat against the United States, we couldn't have done a better job in the last 3.5 years. Our inability to collaborate, our inability to coordinate across all the different components of the private sector, the public sector, the payers, the providers, just getting our whole healthcare system into a single place where we could then respond effectively was very, very, very challenging. And so one of the things that concerns me is that healthcare is now a national security problem. I think that was made very clear, and I think there have been really tremendous and sort of laudable improvements in the way that the White House has launched, the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response. I think OSTP and the National Security Council are thinking about this more. But if we think about healthcare the way we think about national security, we need endpoint detection to know when potential biothreats are entering or exiting the country, particularly entering the country, which can take the form of wastewater surveillance. I think CDC is doing a lot of good work with the National Wastewater Surveillance System and the Traveler Genomic Sequencing Program. We need centralized infrastructure to be able to synthesize that information rapidly to drive potential action. And then I think we need a much more sophisticated doctrine on how the US partners with other countries to inform and respond to potential threats once they've entered our borders. And so I think a real doctrine of public health readiness and treating public health and our healthcare system as a national security problem is something I really believe is necessary. I think from a Palantir perspective, we fortunately have a lot of experience with national security and how to provide infrastructure that helps mitigate potential threats while really prioritizing privacy and security and appropriate audited handling of patient data or civilian data. And so I think that is something that I really want to see us continue to invest in, and that I think I would be really excited for Palantir to be a thought partner on shaping our approach to as a country.
Now, on the second clip here, Hirsch gives his own kind of spin on what the future of healthcare problem to fix alongside the kind of Palantir's vision for it. He aligns his example with biothreats and how the United States was not ready for an effective response, as we could see from the pandemic. And he rightly points out healthcare is a security problem with many opportunities to improve, and he mentions we should be treating healthcare like we do homeland security. And this is a crucial perspective, in my opinion, to be ready for the next threat to our healthcare system, because if we experience another hiccup like this, we actually want to be ready. And of course, this would be a great opportunity for Palantir to be a part of. So overall, I think this was great here, and to have Hirsch speak, I know it's a different face that we're not used to from Palantir, and he does seem pretty young here, honestly, so he could be an up-and-comer for the future. But I think healthcare, honestly, is the second biggest industry and kind of where Palantir is going to build their name up outside of the military context here. And this is going to be on the commercial that'll probably be the biggest aspect, because there's so many opportunities for them to actually get involved, right? This is a mix of the government that he's already been involved with, but also on the private side here, not with just for-profits, but also nonprofits, universities, and then all the different hospitals and clinic, as well as supply chains. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and we can even see this, that Palantir is starting to build up their way and their reputation as being a big player in this. So not only the United States and hopefully around the world, that this begins to spread more. And I think these Milken Institute's kind of summits or other things that are related this way, this is good for Palantir's image in building that up here, because the more that we can get speaking points like this, the more understanding there is about Palantir and how they play a role. They're not just someone that's going to take your data and sell it away. We know that they're working with healthcare institutions, and these are very prestigious as well around the world. And so we know that they're trying to synthesize and ontologize this data for them and make it usable and be a partner alongside you, not just someone who's trying to be a pariah and try to sell your data. So yeah, very good video here. Nice to see them getting out there and putting their name in the healthcare space.